Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. Thank you so much for joining us here on the program. And we are here giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., with a special edition at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays, and then Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news, streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. 9 opportunities to listen to 9 different guests, 9 different conversations, 9 different topics. And I hope that you'll avail yourselves of any or all of them if you can, as well as you can listen to them on the podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry. We're on YouTube as well. We hope that you will subscribe as well as click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, such as this one, you'll be notified and you can tune in and listen. And we also want to remind you that the book Choices is now available on Amazon. The Audible is coming, but it's available in hard copy, I should say hardcover, paperback, as well as Kindle. And we hope that you will avail yourselves of the book that was just released, and leave a review if you would after you've read it. I would appreciate that. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And when you are asked what email address you want to send to the support to, it's richard@richarddugan.com. And finally, we ask that you take some time during the decade of perfect vision, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. Our program today, I think you're going to really enjoy. I know I am, and it's a subject that actually gets me to wanting to do away with what I don't know if it still is referred to this, the GDP of the United States and other countries. I think it the gross, the GHP, something along those lines, the gross happiness project or product, if you will. In other words, rather than determining how much we're producing, we're talking about how happy we are as a country. Now, I've always stated that I've been a very optimistic person. Yeah, I faced my challenges like everybody else, but I'm still here, and I'm hoping that you folks are also on the more optimistic side as well. Well, my special guest has written a very interesting book, and I think he's got some fascinating stories as well as information to share with us. It's the happiness formula, having to do with hope we'll say over hunger equals happiness. Hope over hunger. That's a fraction, ladies and gentlemen, if you will. I remember that from school. A scientific, groundbreaking approach to happiness and personal fulfillment. And Alphonsus Obayuwana, he is my guest. Doctor, I thank you so much, Alphonsus, for joining us here on the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Why is happiness so important to you?
It's important to all of us. We all want to be happier. There is no one person you are going to meet that is not seeking happiness. But as for me, it took 30 years of research to get to where I am, 35 years. I began when I was in medical school. In medical school, you rotate through different specialty: pediatrics, surgery, psychiatry, internal medicine. And when I was in psychiatry, I helped to take care of 2 patients who had just attempted suicide. And I became very deeply touched and became very committed to finding how to detect people who have less hope, who have lost hope, and thinking about suicide, so it can be prevented. If we know how to measure the hope the degree of hope. We will know those who have very little hope or no hope at all, and be able to attend to them early enough before they start thinking about suicide. This was a project that was funded nationally. I got a national grant as a medical student to do this. However, when I finished medical school, before I finished medical school, I finished it, and it took off. Fortune 500 companies like Coca-Cola, General Motors, we're all using it for their employees. And the U.S. Veteran Administration and academic institutions all over the world were using it. And so I became more interested in this study even after medical school. So hope is the desire and the belief that what one desires is achievable. That's what hope is. When you believe and have the feeling that what you desire is achievable, you have hope. And then it became interesting to me, where do desires come from? If what we desire seem achievable, we are happy, where do our desires come from? So I took a study of, as a physician, I participate in delivering babies, and I took a study of studying newborn infants right from birth to find out, what do they desire? What do they want? And it opened up a new phase for me to find out that we all, right from birth, have 5 inborn human desires, which I call hungers, because they are compelling. The hunger here means a compelling desire. So these 5 inborn hungers are as follows, if you don't mind.
No, please.
The hunger for inclusion and acknowledgement. I mean, you know, we all want that. The hunger for intimacy and trusted companionship. The third one is hunger for food and comfort. And the fourth one is hunger for information and answers. And the fifth one is hunger for continuity and certainty. When you look at babies, the moment they come out of the womb, they are crying. So we are all born unhappy. No baby comes out and is giving a high five or thanking the doctor and mom for delivering him or her. They are crying, they are screaming. And how do we make them stop? We wipe them dry, cover them with a comfortable blanket, and give them milk. And they stop crying. When they get to the nursery, if there are 7 babies in the nursery and number 5 is crying, it's one of 2 things. Either it's wet and uncomfortable, or hungry. You change the diaper and give it food, it stops crying. So from there, we can say that the hunger for food and desire is an inborn hunger, because the children have to be taught or have to be prompted by adults to express it. We also know in the family that children always want to be included. So that was the hunger for inclusion and acknowledgement. Daddy, daddy, look at me, see what I'm doing. I did it all by myself. Or they complaining, mommy, they won't let me join. They won't play with me. So hunger for inclusion and acknowledgement is also inborn. Now, there is a hunger for information and answers. As we all know, children ask a lot of questions. What is this, daddy? What is this, mommy? And it goes on and go on. After the what is a why and how. Now, the hunger for intimacy and trusted companionship, even as early as 4 to 6 months old babies, they have someone whose company they prefer and enjoy the most. Sometimes it's the mother, sometimes it's the grandma, sometimes it's a nanny or an older sibling. In a family reunion, a baby is crying, you pass it from hand to hand until the baby reaches the one that he or she is most comfortable with. It doesn't stop crying. Now, for the hunger for continuity and certainty, we all know children love anchors. Let's do that again, daddy. Let's do that again, mommy. Even after the second or third ride on the merry-go-round at the fair, let's do it again, daddy. Comes up. If you ever play peekaboo with a young toddler, it can last for a year if only the adult will cooperate. It goes on. Tell me another story, Grandma, after the third or even the fourth bedtime story. They love continuity and certainty. And that's why they are very, very non-forgiving when you break your promise. Granddad, you promised, they would express. So these are the 5 hungers now that are inborn. And when you look at these hungers, these are what decide what we do every day and how we feel. When we talk about stress, this is where stress comes from. These 5 inborn hungers. So as I was doing this study on hope and hunger, then the issue of happiness came up. Psychology started to make a big deal out of happiness. This started around the year 2000. And so my thinking was, why are they not talking about hope? Hope is what is missing when people try to get their own life, take their life. So hope is what makes life worth living. What is this thing about happiness? So I wanted to find out, how is happiness related to hope? Can you have one without the other? Which one do we need to have to make life worth living? And that is how I came upon this equation, that hope over hunger equals happiness. When you have high hope and low hunger, you are happy. And that is what brought about this book. And going into the literature, it was so heavily supported by the literature. So people compliment me for deducting this formula. To tell you the truth, the formula found me because it was a chance discovery. And that is what this book is about.
Well, we're going to talk more about those 5 hungers as well. What do you think the founding fathers of the United States meant and or knew about happiness when they put into the preamble that we have certain inalienable rights, and among them are life, liberty, and this is the one I want you to focus on, and the pursuit of happiness? Do you think they had any idea what that really, really meant and what they were really proposing when they put that in there?
I think they had an idea from they are coming from the old country because they want to be happier. And that is the ball game. Why were they not happy? They didn't feel included or acknowledged. Okay, there was many answers and information that they were not getting. They couldn't get. They have a hunger for certainty and continuity. So inclusion, acknowledgement, trusted companionship, they did not have. So this is why they came to the new country. So I think they have some idea. However, they did not probably know to the extent this is so important. Because all over the world now, today, people are changing, just like you were saying. GDP is not as good as happiness in determining how a country is doing. The happiness of the citizens of a country is a better barometer for finding out, for determining how well that country is doing, more so than GDP. So this is why we all are after happiness. And it is required. And do you know that science is now finding out that happiness, people who are happy, they live longer than those who are unhappy. People who are happy have a more immune response to diseases than people who are unhappy. They have better satisfaction of life. They have less complaints of chest pain and headaches. So happiness, actually, it is probably a selective advantage in the evolution of humanity. So we all need it.
And happiness, this is the question. So happiness is not the pursuit of happiness in this context, for example, inalienable rights and so forth, is not something that we just have. It is actually a choice that we make, isn't it?
Yes, you can. The pursuit of happiness is intuitive. Okay, everybody wants to be happy, right?
Do they really? Do they really?
Well, I have never found someone who is not looking for happiness. We are all. But the thing to know is that your happiness and how happy you are depends on you. You are the one that knows how happy you are. And you cannot measure happiness other way until this equation came on. This is the first time we can measure happiness now, because happiness cannot be detected in the urine, by blood test, or by looking at a person. The happiness of every person, of each person, is dependent on what you do and what you think, regardless of the circumstances around you. What you do and what you think. If your hope is high, your hungers are lower, you are in zone A of happiness. You are in zone C when you have overwhelming hunger and low hope. Most of us are in the middle zone, zone B, with moderate hope, moderate hunger. But when your hunger is very, very low, and your hope is high, you are in zone A. And in this book, you can test your own happiness. You can get your score.
Yeah.
Right.
I've seen in the chapters, you've got those little quizzes at the end of certain chapters there to do that test. I thought maybe it might be available on your website. But obviously I have to go through the book and take that test and find out where I'm at. But one of the things, the phrases that we hear constantly from people in relationships of all kinds, they will say, well, you make me feel, and it's like, what? How is it that I have suddenly become responsible for you and your emotional state or your state of mind? It's like, wow. Thank you for allowing me to live rent free up here in your head. I don't want to live there rent free. I've got enough to do with my life. Do you find that, and I don't want to necessarily quantify this per se by saying the majority or minority or what have you, but it seems to me that there are a lot of people who just have not gotten to the place yet where they are taking responsibility, which is, I learned back in my days at a Christian radio station, four-letter words were bad. That was even worse, because the last thing you wanted to do was take responsibility for your life, because it was either God or the devil. And it's like, oh, okay, so you must be a puppet on a string, being manipulated by forces you do not understand. And I personally don't believe that. Do you think that that word personal responsibility um, is not taken on maybe by the minority, but because it's a vocal minority, it seems like it's a lot more than what it really is, and that most of us we are happy that we do take responsibility. I own my actions, I own my emotions, I own my thoughts and feelings and so forth. Talk to us about that aspect.
Yes, you are so right. Your feelings, your emotions, they are your making. Now, there are circumstances that would influence, that may interrupt, that may sway you to one side or the other. But at the end of the day, how happy you are depends on what you are thinking and what you are doing. Really. People, there can be bad people around you. There can be people that are doing a lot of bad things to make your life uneasy. But at the end of the day, you are the one that is responsible for how you feel and what you do and how to react to the inside and outside of you. You are in charge of that. That is why this formula, when you know where you are on the hope scale, we call it the personal happiness index. When you know where you are, then you know where to go. There are many people who want to be happy, but they don't even know how happy they are now. So happier than what do you want to be? It's like someone is going to a physical fitness class and you are doing all the exercises recommended by the coach, but you don't know even how much you weigh now. So what is your target? So that's why it's so important to first find out how happy are you and where do you want to go. My happiness, my own score, for reason of full disclosure, is 2.932. I'm at the bottom of the zone A range, right? I want to be happier, and I'm working on it. But right now, I know where I am, and I know where I want to go. So it would be so important for everybody in a school or in a workplace, in a school, for the counselor to know the happiness level of the children in the school. If this more than 1.0, they are okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they can go higher, up to 8.0. But 1.0 is when you're happy. If it's less than 1.0, if it's less than 1.0, less than 1, you are unhappy.
Mm.
Okay. And you can be unhappier and even less than 0.5 and languishing when you are even lower than that. Or you can be 2 or above, which means very happy, or 4.0 and above, which means flourishing.
Mm.
Okay, so there's a range, but this book is the first time we can quantify happiness and know where you are, what your personal happiness index is. And if you are a coach or a counselor and you are working with a client, this is the way to monitor their progress. Right now, there is no way for counselors to measure how happy someone has become after the counseling sessions. So this is why this book, one of the 4 reasons why this book was written.
We are talking about the happiness formula, a scientific, groundbreaking approach to happiness and personal fulfillment. My guest, the author, is Alphonsus Obayuwana, and we are talking about this subject here on Tell Me Your Story. I want to ask, first of all, where is this something that can be applied to a nation, to a country? Because I know that some years ago, it was calculated that the happiest country on the planet, I don't know if they still are, was, I believe it was, I want to say Bhutan. I think that's what it was. But it was in, I believe, Southeast Asia, or at least in that part of the world. And I'm wondering if there are any scales that measure a country's happiness along these lines.
Beautiful question. It's surprising that you mentioned Bhutan. The Bhutanese government was the first to bring this idea using happiness of the citizens to measure how a country is doing. They introduced it into the United Nations. And now there is something they call the World Happiness Report, which comes out every year. And for the past 6 to 7 years in a row, Finland, Denmark, and Iceland had been the leaders in their score. Although there's something wrong with the way they are scoring it, that is disadvantageous to eastern part of the world and also to the less affluent part of the world. But Finland today is regarded as the happiest country in the world. Although the method they are using is not the right method. They are just asking people, 1,000 people randomly selected in each country, how satisfied are you with your life? And they can put 0 from 0 to 10. So when you look at that, in the Eastern world, people are trained to be very modest, even when they are assessing themselves. So in the East, somebody who may use 5 or 6 because of modesty that is ingrained in them. In the West, it's not unusual to be boastful and say 9 or 10. That is one thing to think about, because culture cultural biases come into play. That's number one. Number two, some people may take it as a political statement. How satisfied are you in your country as you are today? Some may see it as a patriotic question and put a 9 or 10 because they love their country. And there are people who don't trust their government that may put 3 or 4 because they don't like the government they are expressing in their country. All right. And Finland, for instance, even though it's said to be the happiest country in the world, is one of the highest users in Europe of antidepressants. See, how can you be the happiest country in the world when you have a high use of antidepressant? Also, their suicide rate, it is high in Finland. So how can you be the happiest country when your incidence of suicide is very high? So these are all the things. And this is why in the book, I am encouraging people to take a look at this formula to see how to actually calculate. My recommendation is the country that have the highest percentage of their citizens in zone A will be the happiest country in the world. And the country that had the highest percentage of their citizens in zone C should be the unhappiest country in the world. And the assessment is done by the individuals, but it is an objective assessment, even though it's done personally, because they are using the right instrument. It's like you take your blood pressure. You know what it is. You are doing it by yourself, so it's somehow subjective. But because you are using the right instrument, it's objective.
Yeah.
This is how this scale is. It is both objective and subjective simultaneously. And it is the only one where you don't have to worry about what we call the social bias. You want people to see you as a good person, so you answer a question the way that is not fully true about you. Okay. So
Alphonsus Obayuwana is my guest. The book is entitled The Happiness Formula. The website, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to find out more about this as well, is the website is triplehproject.com, and we'll be linked to that, triplehproject.com, as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Alphonsus, I've 2 questions that I want to ask you in regards to what you've just shared with us. The first one is, I'm curious as to we'll call it the happiness index. All right. Or in this case, the hope over hunger equals happiness equation. Where does your country of origin rank? If we were to have a ranking, and let's just say, taking what you said about Finland and those countries in that area of the East, as opposed to the Bhutanese country, the country of Bhutan, let's just say they're number 1, just for sake of argument. And there are 100, and if I remember last count, it was like 195 countries on the planet, officially 195. Where would you say your country of origin ranks? Because you seem to be a pretty happy kind of guy, pretty together and wanting the best, not only for yourself, but for others. And that could be the genes. That also could be how you were raised. I mean, there are many, many different factors. But can you quantify that at all as far as your country of origin?
Well, the way it is done now, using how satisfied you are with your country, Nigeria, which is my country of origin, is about 65 position. Okay. The US, where I live now, and I'm a citizen of now,
I'm looking forward to hearing this.
US, for the first time, is not even among the first 20 countries. For the first time.
Wow.
It used to be around 15, 16. The last one they did, US is not among the first 20. The way they are measuring it have imperfections.
Sure. Recognize
For instance,
that. Yes.
The one they just did now, they put Israel as number 6 country, happiest country. Now, people can ask, with all the war there and all this stuff that is going on there, the method they are using has some serious imperfections. But the ranking, as it is now,
you're right.
The countries that are high on the list are the Finland, the Finns,
right?
Denmark, followed by Iceland, followed by Netherlands, and then Israel.
Well, I know that. Well, I know only, and it's been 20 years since I've been to Ireland myself. That the people that I met along the trip that my wife and I took, and we were there twice in 2002 and 2004. And I would have to say, based upon their, I will put it this way, based upon their demeanor, based upon the the relationship that I had with them, even though it was very brief, they all seemed to be, and this was not always in the pubs, mind you, they all seemed to be pretty happy with the country they lived in, the people they lived around. I even had a conversation at the radio station I work for. I met a gentleman who was visiting and was on one of our programs. He was from Northern Ireland, and we began to chat. I said, "Oh my God, I love the country." He says, "Really?" He says, "What is it that you love most? What's it the number one position about Ireland that you love?" And I could have listed a lot of things, but he already knew my answer. And I said, "It's the people. I mean, I could sit in a pub and just listen to them talk. There is something, to me, there is something about when they speak, the accent, and so forth. The only other country that I have ever been to where I spent even a moderate amount of time was Mexico, but that was on one of those cruises along the Pacific coast where you were only in port for a short time and you get back on the ship and so forth. So that country, Ireland, is as far away as I've ever been, as long as I've ever spent in any other country. Actually, and again, it's the only other country that I've ever visited. And I sometimes wonder when I hear the phrase by Americans that the United States, because when you say America, you're talking about North, Central, South, so you need to be specific. And even when you say North America, you're still talking about Mexico and Canada. But they use the phrase that that the United States is the greatest country in the world. I come back with, what do you base that on? Have you lived anywhere else in the world? And even my brother, who worked for Disney and did travel to numerous places around the world to help build their various amusement parks, for example, in Hong Kong, he went to France, and I'm sure many other places as well, China. And he feels very strongly. And yet the weird thing is, and again, I credit him for his ability to be able to do this, He chooses to make his home in Vietnam. And it's like, well, wait a minute. If this is the greatest country in the world, why aren't you living here? And again, I don't know what the reasons are. I haven't really asked him, and it's none of my business. I'm glad that he's doing what he's doing. It just seems that there's a little bit of a dichotomy from my perspective, my observations. But again, we all choose. I mean, I'm living in Santa Barbara, one of the most expensive places in the country to live, and I've been here for 18 years. And I'm not wealthy. I wish. I'm hoping. I'm still looking for that first $100,000. You hear what I said? The first.
Yes.
But that is not going to define my happiness.
Exactly.
I love where we live. We live in the wilderness. We live on the mountain, San Ynez Mountain above Santa Barbara, where it's a 7 mile drive down the hill to get to the 101 and travel around in the cities and so forth. And we're right where I want to be in that I wanted to live by the ocean. That's part of what makes me happy. And we have so many acquaintances, not only business, but just personal friends and so forth. Do you find that within the context of the 5 hungers, that even though you've listed these in a particular order, that relationship, community, is really an essential part of several of these hungers, that if we have those kinds of relationships, those kinds of networks, that can go a long way, despite or maybe because of our personal circumstances. Okay, that actually it can make all of that other stuff worthwhile, because, oh man, look at all the people that are in my life, and they care, and they contact me, and I contact them, and maybe we'll get together for coffee, or maybe we'll meet in the grocery store. That's one of the most amazing things. Is I don't know about what city you live here in the States is, where it is, but I'll go to the grocery store, and 9 times out of 10, I'll run into somebody that I know. We just happened to be in the same store at the same time. And it's really kind of cool. I didn't have that when I was living in Phoenix. I mean, it's even when I was a kid growing up in the 60s and 70s, it was still a big city. What about that in terms of those kinds of relationships and that level of importance that we place on them for our happiness?
Okay. You have raised another very important question. There are things that make us happy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And due to my research, there are 5 situations that make us happy. Number 1, achievements. When you achieve, when you triumph, when you win, you are happy. The gold medalist in the Olympic, the kid who scores perfect score on SAT, happy, achievement. The next one is relationship. Mm-hmm. Not in the order of importance. I'm just listing them, not in the order of importance. Mm-hmm. But relationship comes next. And any situation where there is an increase or enhancement of your human connection or connectedness, we are happy. Whether it's a young lady who gets a wedding proposal, or somebody who got the first grandchild, or who reconciled with an estranged sibling. Anything that makes it, gives a situation where your human connections and connectedness is enhanced, we are happy. Mm-hmm. That's the relationship. Food, comfort, income, material possession, and comfort that make us happy, right? Then, when you learn when you acquire new knowledge, a new capability, going from the 4-year-old learns to ride a bicycle without the training wheels the first time, or a young lady who took flying lessons and now can fly without any supervision. When you learn a new skill, you get a new information, we are happy. And then the fifth one again is when you have a pleasurable religious experience, we are happy. When you look at all these things that make us happy, you will find that they make us happy because they decrease the intensity of our hunger, inborn hungers. That's how it works. Okay? When you have a pleasant spiritual relationship, it decreases your hunger, the intensity of your hunger for continuity and certainty. Because religion is about continuity. We pray for long life, or even pray for life after death.
Yes.
Continuity and certainty. We want to know how our tomorrow is going to be. We want to be sure about tomorrow. What's going to happen to me in the future, next year? When our increase in income, we get a pay raise or buy a new house, increase in possession, material possession, decrease our hunger, the intensity of our hunger for food and comfort, which is an inborn hunger. When we get recognized after we achieve, we get like the kid with perfect score in SAT, the journalist who got the Journalist of the Year award, it increases your self-esteem, which then decreases the intensity of your hunger for inclusion and acknowledgement. See, these are all. You cannot get happy except you raise your hope or decrease your hunger. Okay? So anything you can think of that makes you happy, when you trace it, what it does is that it reduces your hunger and increases your hope. Okay? So you are so right when you were talking about relating hunger to happiness, like relationships, income. They work, they make us happy because they reduce the intensity of our inborn hunger and increase our hope, which means what makes life worth living. That's the hope.
Yeah. TripleHproject.com is the website. That's where we're going to send you folks. We'll be linked to that website. Alphonsus Obayuwana is my guest, and we are talking about his book, The Happiness Formula. It's a scientific a groundbreaking approach to happiness and self-fulfillment. And you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and this is a fascinating conversation, Alphonsus. One of the things that comes to mind, and I'm going to relate the story that is available for folks on your website, and I found fascinating. I'm just going to paraphrase the information about a young boy who was overwhelmed by school, homework, and this and that and the other thing. And he gets home and he calls 911. And that particular day was a light day for the 911 operators, and he's asking the operator on the line for help because he's feeling overwhelmed and needs help with homework and this and that and the other. And the operator actually helped him with his homework. And he felt so much better afterwards, thanking the operator, but also even apologizing for taking time away from the operator's job, if you will. Really appreciated the fact that this person took the time. Does that seem to be one of the biggest issues, specifically here in the States, that people have that certainly can contribute to their unhappiness, that they are, for myriad of reasons, afraid, I think that's the right word, to ask for help because of whatever stigma they think is tied to asking for help. Because my personal belief on a metaphysical or spiritual level is that if the Creator had intended for us to live solo, solitary lives, I am certain that there are sufficient Class M planets in the universe that we would all be occupying one, all by ourselves. What's the reality? Over 8 billion people are on one planet. And that tells me that we're here to live and work and play and love together and support each other. Ergo, the network that we were talking about earlier. Is that one of the other issues that we have a problem with? And that is the asking for help when we genuinely need it.
You are so right. You're so right. And the 8 billion people on Earth, we are living together. And the sooner we realize the brotherhood of the entirety of humanity, the better for us. Actually, about happiness, one of the times you are happiest is when you do something for another person.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it comes back, reflect back to you. When you do something good for other people, you feel very good yourself. So there is a connection there. And we all need to realize exactly what you say. When you need help, ask for help. But occasionally, though, there's nobody to help. The boy who called the 911, he had no other option. Okay? The story of the parents are not really well known, where he was living, but he just felt overwhelmed. And unhappiness is mostly ignored in our culture. When you ask people, how are you doing? Oh, fine. How are you doing? Oh, fine. We don't even think about it. And we don't even expect them to tell us, oh, well, all is not fine right now. This is it. We people who ask the question are not even expecting that. We were all just moving around. How are you? I'm fine. But when you are sick, you go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you have been wronged, you get an attorney. If your hair is too long and you want to look more beautiful and clean up, you go to the barber shop or the beauty parlor.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are unhappy, there's no place to go.
Yeah.
So that's why happiness coaching. I train happiness coaches who will help people who are overwhelmed by stress of everyday life. And that's what I do. And that's what Triple H a project is really all about. Training and certifying happiness coaches to help. Because when you think about all the ills of the society, whether it's suicide, homicide, or even addiction, they are all related to unhappiness that have been ignored. When unhappiness is there, has been ignored, that's how people look for other venues. They get angry and they get anxious, they get hopeless. That's how they take their life. They don't want to forgive. They are angry about their deprivations, homicide, and burglary, and stealing, and of course, drug addiction is a part of that. So we can no longer ignore unhappiness, especially when they last more than 6 weeks. So I'm hoping for a time when happiness coaches are available on university campuses. They are available at the work sites, the workplaces. And according to research, in the workplace now, productivity is highest when the place is a happy workplace. Absenteeism is decreased. Turnover is decreased. Creativity is increased. This is all by Harvard Business Review. And these are research findings. So happiness is good personally and collectively for humanity.
We are talking today about happiness and the pursuit of happiness, in a manner of speaking. And it is, quite honestly, and this is just from my own perspective, Alphonsus, it is a choice that I talk about in my book, Choices, that, you have to match your words, you have to match your actions, and you have to match your personal input, what you read, what you watch on your devices, whether it's a TV or a phone, what have you, who you associate with. And that is one of the aspects that I find so interesting that has happened primarily in the last 10 to 15 years, is that people are severing ties with others who are not like-minded. And it, to me, flies in the face. I don't know if you're familiar with the author James Redfield, who wrote the book, The Celestine Prophecy, but he talks about how each of us has messages for one another.
Yes.
And that when we cut ourselves off from others, even if it is through the process of elimination because they don't think the way that we do, we're actually denying ourselves of messages that, and I put it this way, that the universe is trying to convey to us.
Yes.
And that it is actually better to come through someone who is not like-minded than who is, because, and I'm sure you've had this experience where someone close to you, a child or a spouse or a coworker, what have you, will say something to you, something very profound. And maybe a week or two later, somebody who maybe you just met says the same thing, and the light bulb goes on. And you go back to the person who said that to you 2 weeks previous, and they'll go, Well, I said that to you 2 weeks ago. What, but it is quite honestly, it is the person or the experience, if you will, that makes it profound. And it doesn't mean that you didn't listen to the friend 2 weeks ago. It's just that it wasn't until you had experienced certain things and then this second person says the same thing that it clicks.
Yes.
Um, how important is it in our happiness to actually get outside our comfort zone? And I understand that one of the hungers is for comfort and continuity and so forth. However, you and I both know that the only constant in the universe is change. And so it's like, if you accept that the only constant in the universe is change, it is a little more challenging to find continuity. But at the same time, if we recognize the reality, then isn't it sort of a good thing that we begin that process of realization that, okay, there are certain parts of my life that I can have continuity, I can have stability, but I also have to recognize that in this universe, in my life, there is nothing that's permanent. Everything is temporary. Situations are temporary. Life is temporary, et cetera, et cetera. Can you expound on that particular aspect when it comes to drawing other people into your life?
Yes, definitely. Um, when we interact with people and circumstances arise in our environment, our own genetic upmaking, our knowledge, the resources that we have, our preoccupations, these are all important. What we think about them, our mindset, and what we do, those are the two important things. I have to emphasize that over and over again, because food and comfort, for instance, is important. But there are people who are fasting voluntarily, for spiritual reasons or for reason of weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
And they are doing that because it is serving some other functions in their life. So money, for instance, there are happy peasants and miserable millionaires. Okay, so our hungers, they are there. But sometimes the intensity of one kind of hunger is more important to us than the other. And so we shift and we can modify. So that is the reason why getting out of your comfort zone is not a bad thing in many instances. However, you got to put the whole thing in totality and view it holistically to know where you are.
Mm.
See, that is the main message here.
Well, I have to say, and that's another thing. There are phrases I'm working on removing from my vocabulary because I like the phrase. Well, I have to say, because I don't have to. I just if I want to say it, I'll say it. If I don't want to say it, I won't say it. I don't have to say. I have to say. It's like people who are locked into a loop where every third word is the word like. Or they use the phrase, I know there's a term for those kinds of phrases. There's somebody that can tell me what those are. That actually sort of diminish or take away from what you are actually saying. They're sort of they distract, and it's like you do it to yourself. I don't necessarily want to put it in the category of self-sabotage, But you know what I'm saying. It's one of those attributes that we all work on, like ahs and ums in a conversation, especially if
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
on radio or television and you're
yeah.
conversing with someone. I've learned as much as I can. I've learned to pause instead of um, going on and trying to get out the words. I will go on and get out the words and turn those into more dramatic pauses, that kind of thing. And I think that, and actually learning how to do that and being conscious of it actually makes me happy, because I feel as though now I am communicating on a different level
Yes.
and thinking about it a little bit more. Again, being more consciously aware of the words that are coming out, rather than trying to push it and push it and push it and push it. And that's when the other things will pop up. The happiness formula. Um, one of the, there it was right there, is something that I suppose could be used in a math class, that kind of thing. It's because it's a fraction that equals happiness, hope over hunger. And you've gone over those 5 hungers that we all have that are basic to all human life. Would you say that the planet is a happy place, or are there more unhappy than happy at the present day, but that there is not only room for improvement, but improvement is coming? Maybe especially because of your book and the formula.
Yes. We have used this in our research. We have tested people in North America, I mean, Canada and the US. We've tested people in mostly Nigeria and Ghana. We've tested people in the Caribbean and also Central America. And in all communities, there are people who are happy and unhappy in every community. I think the pursuit of happiness is there for all of us, and it can only improve because the desire to be happy is there. We just have to find how to help people make that possible, right? So my score, my personal happiness index, I know it, and I know from the questionnaire that I answer, I know where I want to be. I want to move from 2.9 to 3, to 3.5 or higher. Okay. I even want to get to 4, which is flourishing.
Yeah.
Right. However, for everybody who is below 1.0, they need help. They need coaches, and they need self-help books to help them get to that level.
Do you consider optimism the equivalency of happiness, or are those two different things?
See, exactly what you are saying is what drove me into this research. Okay, hope. Hope is what people lose when they commit suicide. So what is the relationship between hope and happiness? Optimism, when you are optimistic, that means you have high hope for the most part of things, about the most part of things in life. That's optimism. So if you have high hope, in fact, in the book, there's a chapter that ends with the conclusion that a happy life is a life that is full of hope. That's what a happy life is. A life that is full of hope.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have hope, there's no, if you are a millionaire, for instance, and you are having a party and the world celebrities are there, and then you get a call from your doctor that your biopsy is positive for cancer. What happens? Your hope for the future is threatened right there and there.
Mm.
And that party you are in instantly means very little.
Mm. Mm.
Because your hope for the future has been diminished. So a happy life is when you think and you have the belief that your desires are achievable.
Mm.
Okay.
When we talk about choices, the choices that we have made in the past have placed us where we are. I even go so far as to say, Alphonsus, that the choices that you and I made as children seems pretty far-fetched, but those choices have brought you and I together here today.
No question.
But what was so interesting in a conversation I had with one of my guests about this, then I go on to say, and the choices that we make now and, going forward will determine where we will be in the future. To which my guest said, yes, with this proviso, that the choices that you make today are going to be based upon what you perceive the future to be, your future to be. And it seems to me that as an optimist, and part of it came about by working for the Christian radio station I was at back in the 80s and early 90s. And of course, the story of the end of times and all of those aspects from the prophecies from the Old as well as the New Testament. I said, is there anything I can help you to do to bring about this change you're talking about? Because you've been telling the same story for 2,000 years. And from my perspective, not to be disrespectful, but I'm kind of bored and I'd like to move on to a new story. I really would. One of optimism, one of hope, one of excitement about the future, not dread they say, well, no, we're not dreading the future because there's, and so forth. And that's kind of where I look at it. And someone said to me not long ago, they said, Richard, you wrote the script that you're living and you can rewrite it. So for each one of us, and you've done this, you've rewritten the script for your life as you go because you have hope in the future. And I would take that from our conversation that you do.
Definitely. Definitely. I have hope
Alphon-
for the future.
yeah. Alphonsus, I want to thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here, as I say, to change the world for the better for everybody, that it is possible. I was thinking when you talked about, the people who, the different segments of our society, especially veterans, and I would like to think, but obviously I know I'm wrong in this, but I'd like to think that that a veteran who has served, who chose that life, who chose to enlist and what have you, to do what they chose to do, whether it was to defend our freedoms, if you want to put it that way. They made that choice. They went and they served. And then they come home, and you would think that there would be a certain element of, at least internally, of pride in, I did what I believed in. I served my country, and I'm proud of that. And that would be enough. But I have a feeling that that one or two of these hungers are not being met. They're not being taken care of post enlistment, if you will, or post service. And that's where the issue lies for them in, shall we say, their unhappiness. So
Exactly.
I hope
Exactly.
that this book gets into the hands of veterans and veterans support groups and so forth, so that they can take this test to see where they are. And I think the other thing too, Alphonsus, wherever you are needs to be okay because there's room for improvement, right?
Definitely.
That's really
Definitely.
important, I think, to
Yes.
emphasize.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There is room for improvement. No matter, start now, wherever you are, there is room for improvement.
Yeah.
And there are 5 things that I tell people to do every day, if
All
you
right.
can. If you do them every day, you will see the difference. Number one, put a smile on somebody's face, no matter whom, your spouse, your child, a neighbor, person next to you on the line at the post office or motor vehicles department. Put a smile on somebody's face. That's number one. Number two, think about your soul. Think about your soul, your spirituality. And spirituality doesn't really mean going to church per se. It means that have some belief or some idea concerning God and man, the good and evil, concerning correct and incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
Have some idea of the meaning of life. Just have some idea. And whatever that idea is for you that you are convinced with, try to nurture it. But just by asking, why am I here? And where am I going to go after this?
Mm.
That's a question anybody can ask. Find some answers to that or think about that regularly. It keeps you awake
Mm-hmm.
and to be paying attention to things that are important. Right? No matter how destitute you are, you have a lot to be thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate what you have. When you appreciate what you have, what the little that you have appreciates in value.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that is what I think everybody should do every day.
Well, we
And you
would
will see that your life will be more meaningful and a happier one.
absolutely. Well, Alphonsus, I want to thank you so much for joining us here on Tell Me Your Story and sharing your story as well as the story of the happiness formula. The website, once again, folks, is triplehproject.com. We'll be linked to that site. We'll have it available. And we certainly hope that you'll go there, order a copy of the book, and read more about Alphonsus and the work that he is doing through the Triple H Project. I have 3 final questions I ask all of my guests before we wrap up here as we come to the close of our conversation here. But I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and that is our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We're also here Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news, and you can tune in by listening and going to the Listen Live link at richarddugan.com. That's where we stream live at those times. We also are on, we podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio. We're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. We hope you'll subscribe and click notification. And we also want to remind you that the book Choices is now available. It's through Amazon, hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. The Audible version is coming soon. We hope that you will get your copy and read it as well. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we would be gratefully appreciative. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And take some time to go within and listen to that still small voice during this, the decade of perfect vision. We move to our final three questions for our very special guest, and to our special guest, again, our thanks. And the first of those three questions is, who is?
I'm a physician, I'm a scientist, and I am a happy person. I'm happy to be alive.
What gets you up in the morning?
The idea that I have something to contribute gets me out in the morning. That I have something to contribute and I want to make a difference.
And finally, what was your best day?
My best day, I will say, it is probably the day that I'm just thinking about this now because I have many good days. But my best day would be the day that I got admission into medical school. I was very happy because that's what I want to do. I wanted to be a doctor taking care of patients. And that, yes.
Well, Alphonsus Obayuwana, I want to thank you so much. Obayuwana, I want to get that correct. Alphonsus Obayuwana, for joining us here on the program again and being a part of the work that we're doing here on Tell Me Your Story. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to getting a copy of the choices.
And thank you, folks. Thank you. And thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast. Love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. To my dear friend Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. And to my friend Zorro, aho, aho.